The reason why I started a foundation in 2000 and the tsunami was in 2004, 2006. And the reason why it's called The Foundation, and apparently the only other NGO in the world that's called The Foundation is the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. They refer to themselves as the foundation. Could there be any other? So I started the foundation, and we continue to be the only nonprofit organization in the world doing this work. I'm not saying we do it well or we do it badly. I'm just saying this kind of work that we do is the only nonprofit in the world because it's one of the most foolish, insensible ideas you can think of. And this is the idea that the world, as we know only too well, you just have to cross the road, is full of massive inequalities uh, within countries, within states, within neighborhoods. And what has caused these inequalities is gone. What can we do to address these inequalities? And by inequalities, I mean inequalities in happiness. Now, happiness can translate into education or health or whatever it is that you define it as. I'm looking around, I'm thinking to myself, this country has, forget this country, Bombay has, development indices of sub-Saharan Africa, the mean, and Norway or Sweden or one of those very well-developed countries in pocket in terms of education, health, clean water, sanitation, maternal health, all of that. So what is it, I was asking myself, impedes a place that is, I'm using the word dangerously, underdeveloped to develop? I think the first thing is that they don't know. What the hell can we aspire to? What is the definition of what makes me happy? So I think that education, whether it's moral, whether it's mental, whether it's emotional, whether it's academic, is necessary. And outside of that, it's exposure. Let's have a look at Breach Candy, Bombay. Let's have a look at Manhattan, New York. Let's have a look at the Aleutian Islands. Let's have a look at Antarctica. Let's have a look at sub-Saharan Africa. And then let's decide what works for us. As an example, our Andamans kids, who are now 27 years old, they want 5G. They want 5G network because that's the way work can be done wherever you are in the world. But they don't associate a 5G fancy phone with a Mercedes-Benz. They're like, Bhaiya, what are you going to do with the Mercedes-Benz in the islands? Like the circumference is 8 kilometers, you know? So here's what the foundation does. We take a year to a year and a half selecting 6 children, which is a function of money, 6 children from a region that has, for political reasons, historical reasons, geographical reasons, been left behind. And we select 6 kids from that region at the age of 11. For various reasons that I won't go into, just suffice to say that social scientists say 11 years old is the correct age. Again, it's a sweeping generalization. A correct age for a child to leave home and not be traumatized, and yet not be old enough not to absorb like a sponge what's going on in their world that they will be going to. So it takes us 1.5 years to select 6 children based on many parameters, primary of which is compassion, a fierce love for your homeland, kindness, and a general, at the age of 11, what can you make out? A general sense of love and empathy, which you can't fake. So select the children at the age of 11 and give them the best education, the best exposure within and outside of the Ashoka Universities of the world, within and outside the Rishi Valleys of the world. The education is a 360-degree lens at life. And that lens is pretty easy for everyone to appreciate. Nonviolence, kindness, generosity, constructiveness. Is it going to hurt anyone? Will I knowingly be hurting anyone? All of that is the filter at which you can look at even this talk. So that lens is the lens that the foundation provides for the next 20 years. So they're with us all the way up to their PhD, and work after that. They could be 30, 31, 32. Obviously not with us in the way that they were when they were 11. And in the hope, in the hope that they will go back to their homelands and devise, create, and enforce the model of development they believe is best for their homeland. Nothing that you and I can predict. And so somebody from the Gates Foundation said to me, this is the most foolish idea I've ever heard. And then they said, well, it's the only idea worth doing. You can't make an 11-year-old kid sign a bond and say, 20 साल बाद तुम्हें जाना है वापस कश्मीर, तुम्हें जाना है वापस Manipur. You can't say that. All you can do is select amazing human beings. Not difficult to make out an amazing human being, whether you're 4 or 40. And then just trust. Trust in the world. Trust in goodness. Trust in what you saw and hope it works. So our Andaman's kids, we've had one kid dropping out because he had a terrible case of epilepsy, which kept recurring, and he would have died if someone had to be with him all the time. So we said, listen, you should go home. At the time, he had finished Rishi Valley and he was in Bombay in college. And we lost a kid who, that's a great story, but too long for this one, was the poorest of the children that we selected in the Andamans. Really poor, grindingly poor. Her mother was going to commit suicide if something hadn't happened to her daughter's fortunes. I didn't realize till Veronica, the mother, told me 3 years later, she was ready to kill herself because she was working in a quarry, breaking stones for 57 rupees a day. She used to work for about 14 hours and she's half my size. So she dropped out because as soon as she graduated, she was offered, jobs, a receptionist in a hotel or whatever in Port Blair. And she just went back and said, I'm going to make 25,000 bucks. And of course, I took a year and a half talking to her, telling her it's not about being with us or anything like that. It's about what kind of a human being are you developing into and why that will stop. She left. We have 4 kids of the Andamans. One of them who spent his whole life chasing centipedes and scorpions out of his hut in the Middle Andamans. Anyone been? In the Middle Andamans, primeval forest, because there was no electricity, has committed his life to micro electricity, solar, wind, tidal, small, in places, in pockets. He basically wants to electrify his village. Great, but in a sensible way. The Nicobar tribal girl is 27 and she's amazing. Krishti School of Design. Worked at Nicobar, the label, and now is working with Seva and the others working on the other side. How to create stuff. So basically, Nicobari handicrafts are non-existent, right? But she knows it can happen because they create handicrafts just for their little birthday parties and their child's birth or a wedding. And she says, this is something we can do. And so she's looking at doing that, not on a good earthish level, but certainly a level where it will not change the fortunes. The Nicobari tribal is not unhappy, but just give so much more happiness to 100 girls or boys like her to do this, and also create money that goes straight in the hands of the village. And Sheba is one of them. I haven't met, out of the 14 kids we have from the Andamans, from Kashmir and from Manipur, I haven't met such extraordinary human beings. Anybody know Sheba here? Okay. Would you agree? I mean, she's just so kind, so compassionate, funny, interesting, introspective. It's my turn now. Bright, conflicted. Just such a wonderful mix that you want to see in a human being. But at the end of all of that, gentle. Her first response is a gentle response. it's always unafraid. It's a clear-eyed, gentle, unafraid response. The way we should all be. So yeah, so that's why I'm here. I just want to put that out there because that's the context with which I'm here. And I think it's a pleasure being here. Your reputation precedes you and all of that, but I've been to some, and you took the name of the university I've been to, where I would never visit again. Some of the most arrogant, entitled, stupid, intellectually stupid human beings I've met. It wasn't on the shores of India, it was far away. And they just thought the sun shone through their ass. And I was like, like, and in fact, I went in that college, I went to 5 schools: the graduate school, the school of education, the undergraduate school. Fantastic, 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 fantastic. When I went to the business school, that's where I met these guys. I was like, sorry, anyone here? An MBA? Do you offer MBA in this place? Oh, thank God. Good. Now we can chat. So I thought what we'll start with, does everybody understand English? Because I can speak in Hindi, not a problem. What do you prefer? English, hands up. Okay, Hindi, hands up. Swahili, any hands at all? No point. So I want to talk to you about 3 of the most difficult moments of my life, because it's something you guys will totally identify with. And on the brink of getting smashed. By smashed, I don't mean physically, I mean on the brink of being humiliated, on the brink of being not severely doubted, but called out, insulted. I inhabit 3 worlds: the world of cinema, directed 2 films, going to be directing my 3rd one, written 3, and acted in about 45 films and some web series. Bulbul was mentioned, but that's a film. That's not a web series. 2 NGOs. One is the foundation that you know a little bit about. The other one is called HEAL, which works on child sexual abuse. We can chat about that later. 16 years of the foundation, 16 years of HEAL. And of course, the world of rugby. Played rugby for the last 42 years of my life. Obviously played for India for 11 years, as Shiva said. Now the president of Rugby India, which is incredible. It's amazing, just amazing. And I want to talk to you about one really bad thing that happened to me in each of these 3 fields of my life. I think you might or might not pick up on something. I want to start with the first one, which is cinema. So I'm a theater actor, not acted in films. I'm doing my, I've been asked to do a film. And anybody act? Anybody act? Anybody? Aren't we in a theatrical space? Okay. Oh, the irony. So we have a theater actor doing a film, and it doesn't require you to be an actor to realize that to actually look at the difference between the 2, it's a vast difference. First, there's no audience. So you don't know whether you've done a good job or a bad job. Sometimes when you're doing a play, you can up the energy because you're not getting enough from the audience, or, they're getting a bit, okay, I'll play it down, whatever. But in cinema, there's nobody. The only person who arcs the role for you is the director. So the director will say, hey, tone it down a little bit. In the previous scene, you just buried your father. You can't be dancing like a demented gazelle in springtime in the next scene. Tone it down. Maybe you just moving ahead to the music while the others are dancing, and you're feeling a bit like, oh, dad died kind of thing. So the director. The second thing is chronology. In a play, there's a chronology, and nothing disturbs that. Whereas in a film, the first day, your father's dead, you're burying him. The next day, you're taking your dad out for an ice cream, and unless you believe in the afterlife, it's just back and forth. So to get the chronology set, again, you need somebody to say, hey, arcing the performance, chronology, and no applause or boos, right? So you really don't know what's working and what's not. And again, is that person. Who's going to clap? Who's going to boo? Who's going to calibrate performance? For reasons I will not go into, I didn't get any of that. All I got was, yeah, okay, let's move on. Next shot. Yeah, okay, yeah, we can move on. Okay, come on, let's go to the next one, kind of thing. That's like, dude, what's going on here? Am I doing good? Am I not doing good? Is it working? Is it not working? Give me something. It would have helped if the place I was staying in and the food I was eating and the surroundings were, maybe really nice, but they weren't. It was a village somewhere down south, and the place where I was staying in was possibly the Taj of that place, and the owners of that esteemed establishment had understood that it's location that determines how wonderful a hotel is. So they had built the hotel between what seemed to me the busiest petrol pump in the world and the most popular temple in the world. So the musical car horns and the diesel fumes, no air conditioning, obviously. They were way ahead of the times. They were, eco-friendly before that phrase had been coined. And so diesel fumes, musical car horns, even urine, fat stench of urine also, all of that from one side. And the horns and the trucks and buses revving would stop at 3 in the morning. And then the temple bells would start at 3:15 to appease the Lord or Lords. And so you add 14 minutes of sleep, dreamless sleep. So when you don't sleep, you know how irritable and fragile you become psychologically. The food, very generous people there. Whether you ordered varai or dosa or you had an uttapam, they would give you a katori of sand free. And because you were their honored guest, they wouldn't wait for you to add the sand. They would mesh it in the batter. So you would eat everything with sand in the batter. And I ingested enough silicone to become a supermodel. So it wasn't easy. Still, if I had the appreciation or just the feedback, the honest to and fro, I would have had a great time. So every evening I used to go back to my hotel and I would think to myself, how did I do? How did I do? Am I shit? Am I good? Is it working? What can I do better? And I would just have to then say to myself, calm down. You've acted on stage for the last, professionally for the last 4 years and all your life before that. Just go with your instinct. Go with what works for you. And I just, whatever felt right, whatever what is instinct? It's experience of what you've done before and maybe what others have done. What else can you call it? You can't really call it instinct. It's more like, this is what I've seen of good acting. This is what I've seen of mine. This is what people had said. So putting it all together, this should work. Also, there's a thing, if anybody is an actor, what feels right. It felt right. I wasn't faking it. So, did that. A film is a laborious process. So a year later, the film was ready. And I get a call saying that the film has been chosen to be represented at the Toronto International Film Festival. So we're in Toronto. And I tell the director, but I haven't seen the film. You're inviting me for this festival, but I haven't seen the film. I haven't seen my work in it. And in typical fashion, yeah, okay, you can see it there. So there I am in Toronto on a very windy day in September. And when Toronto gets, anybody been in Toronto? When it gets windy in Toronto, it gets seriously cold. So I have butterflies in my stomach, which is basically all the acid boiling because I haven't eaten since the morning. I'm probably hungover from the previous night because I'm like, oh, I'm going to see my film tomorrow. And I'm freezing cold in a cinema hall with about 400-500 people from all over the world. That's what festival audiences are like. Half the audience is from Toronto, so they're Torontonians, and the other half are like, some chain smoking editor from Chile kind of situation, who've all come for the festival. So there we are watching this film. Nobody knows who I am. I barely know who I am. I'm sitting there watching the film, and I can be very honest with you. All I'm doing when I'm watching the film is grading myself. I don't give a shit about the film. I just care about myself. So I'm watching each scene and I'm going, that's not bad. The other next scene, okay, yeah, that's good. Third one, ooh, is anybody, kind of thing. And at the end of it, I'm sweating bullets in that cold. I figure I've escaped with minor injuries. One of the programs, the festival comes in front and says, we'd like to take question and answers with the director of the film. So please welcome Mr. XXXX, who comes on stage and says very generously, before I take any questions, I'd like the lead actor of the film to join me. Please welcome Rahul Bose. And I'm on row 63 and I come walking up and I come up. And everybody stands up. Now, I've been to places where there's a standing ovation. For example, somebody receives a Lifetime Achievement Award, right? Occasion for a standing ovation. And in these halls, there are people who are important, who are on couches. By the way, guys, where are the couches here? There are couches. Then there are slightly cushioned chairs. And then the proletariat has the wooden chairs and some people standing at the back kind of thing. And so when the Lifetime Achievement Award is given to somebody who takes a long time getting on stage because, he or she must be in their 90s or their late 80s and, they need assistance. So as they come on stage, the people in the couches in front are invariably their contemporaries. People who've worked with them, people who've, had a long association with them, who are also in their late 80s and early 90s. So they take their time getting to their feet and sort of putting their hands together to clap. And as that happens, the people in the cushioned chairs behind decide that we are also important. So we should also stand and acknowledge this person because we are important. So they stand and they start clapping. And then the rest of the people can't see. So they stand because like, what is going on here? Who? Oh, yeah, I can see. Oh, wow, okay, they're taking a long time getting on stage, kind of thing. And so there's a ripple effect of people who are irritated, who can't see, who keep standing up, keep standing up, keep standing up. So the standing ovation happens like that in terms of the people. Oh, this wasn't that. This was just people who didn't know who the hell I was. They stood. And that's not the point of the story. The point of the story is this. When I stood there, and I remember it as clear as night follows day, I said to myself, thank God. Thank God I trusted my instinct. What I'm calling instinct, but you know what I mean. Because if I had gone with somebody else's advice, and it had not worked, I would never know. But when you're faced, it's not the ideal situation, but when you're faced with nothing, a desert on the outside in terms of feedback, just dig really deep into everything you know or have seen really close at hand. Because then if it's booed or if it's clapped, you own it. And that's the point of this little story, is whatever you do in life, take the decision when you're wondering which you will own. But I don't care which way this goes, I'm with it. This is my baby. This baby could come first or could come last. It's my baby. The second one is from the world of nonprofit. The tsunami hit the Andaman Nicobar Islands, Indonesia, parts of Sri Lanka, southern parts of India. Can anyone tell me when? It was, you were born. You might have just been born. 2004. Any idea what the date? Yeah, Boxing Day. You know why it's called Boxing Day? Apparently because that's when all the presents, the boxes of the presents have to be unboxed and put away. Seriously. So, and I turned up, I went to the Andamans on the 30th morning because I don't know. Does anyone know that there are 576 islands in the archipelago, or that 37 are inhabited by human inhabitation? The total population is about 5.5 lakhs, out of which 5 lakhs are immigrants from different parts of the country, Tamils, Sardars, people from Malayalis, Bengalis, and only 50,000 are tribals, out of which 35,000 are actually tribals that look like you and me. And the ones that are the tribals are about 13, 14,000 of the Jarawas and the Onges and the Sentinelese scattered across the islands. I don't know any of this. I just went because what I could see, everybody was going to Nagapattinam and Kadlur because it was easy to go there to do help because it was on the mainland. You get into a train, RAC, and you start working. Whereas the Andamans was 50 grand away. It cost 50 grand in those days. Okay, that's business. 25 grand economy to go. I went. But before I went, I knew a lot of friends in the nonprofit world. I didn't have my NGO at the time, as I said. So I cobbled together a network of 25 NGOs, called themselves the Solidarity Network. And I said, look, I'll be your eyes and ears on the ground and tell you exactly what is needed. And you raise the funds and send the stuff. For example, in the first week of a calamity, do you know the most important thing to get is digging tools to bury animals, to bury their bodies, because otherwise disease will spread. When you're hacking primeval forest to make way for scared residents of an island who don't want to stay on the beach anymore because of tsunami and they want to go in, the first thing you liberate, which is a great sign of bio whatever, is mosquitoes. So when you go into primeval forest, the first thing you find is mosquitoes so thick that between you and me, we couldn't see each other. It's like that. Lucky for you, of course, a fog of mosquitoes. So I went. And correctly, wherever you go in this country, when there's a disaster, you have a relief commissioner who's sitting there and says, organizes who's going to give what, where it's going to go, etc. And backstory, there was another Hindi movie actor, at the time very well known, still well known, who had gone to one of the areas down south near Chennai and had a press conference about how he's going to change the face of this village and how the villager needs this. And the collector was there and they were like, yeah, we'll do this together. And money was being raised. And there were photographs of him sweating and taking out relief from a truck and giving it to the poor, unwashed millions of that area. And then he disappeared. So by the time I went on the 30th, he had come, done his publicity and disappeared. So this had obviously pissed off a lot of people, as it would you too. And so this person who I was talking to in the Andamans said, what have you come for? I said, well, I'm representing 25 NGOs and I'm their eyes and ears on the ground. I want to know exactly what's needed because there's no point giving blankets to people at 45 degrees centigrade. So, everybody just gives blankets. Somehow it's that thing, huh? It's like your mother saying, like your mother's dinner. Mom, I've killed someone. Ha, khana kha lo, we'll talk after that. The blanket is that kind of a situation when it comes to relief. So he said, no. He cut me off and said, I know exactly why you're here. You're here for your personal publicity. You'll get all the publicity and then you leave. And that's it. That's all. We'll never hear from you again. So here's what you do. You make 3 copies of what you're going to give us, and then we'll decide where to distribute it. That's it, sir. I can't tell you unless I know. He said, I'll tell you, right down. I'll tell you what we need. I said, how do you know? What do you mean, how do I know? I'm the relief commissioner. I said, yeah, but where is it? Who's told you this? He said, no, I don't need to go to the islands. I know what's going on. I said, have you ever been? He said, no. That's when I excused myself. And determined that I would see for myself what people needed before recommending anything to the Solidarity Network. Many planes were going down. I don't know whether you're aware, Nicobar is out of bounds. Tribal areas are out of bounds in the island, which is great. You can't go in there without a tribal permit or without some evidence that you're doing some work for the government or whatever it might be. There's a plane flying tomorrow. It's carrying the press, not people with tribal permits. It's carrying the press to go and see the areas. Officials are taking them around the areas so you can get on the plane. I'm informed by one of the very senior people in the army because the Andamans at the time was the Tri-Services Command. So there was, lots of Army, Air Force, Navy presence, as well as civilian presence of the government. I was like, great. So I get onto the plane. I'm sitting in the plane, It's one of those planes which you see in movies with seats on the sides. You know what I mean? That those Russian planes. And one of the officials from the government comes into the aircraft before taking off and announces my name and asks me to get off the plane. So obviously, it's vindictive. And so I actually am singled out and I have to walk out and leave the plane. Amitav Ghosh, anyone heard his name? The writer? Amitav was also there with me. In fact, I had asked him to come. He wanted to write something. I said, Amitav, this is just crazy. He said, why are you doing this? Don't do this. Why are you humiliating yourself? Go to any part of the country. You want to do good work, you can go anywhere. Why are you stuck on this? I said, no, I don't think anyone's going to come here. I want to do work here. Then I went to this guy, his bosses, boss. And he's sitting in a room half the size of this hall and says, yeah, what's the problem? And I said, I mentioned this guy by name and I said, he's anti-human. Because when a human being wants to help another human being and you stop them, that's the only definition. He heard me through. And 3 months later, that guy was transferred. Lots of other complaints from other people, of course. Long story short, 19 years later, I'm still there. Has anyone seen a single photograph of me from the Andamans? I've been there 64 times. I went there 30 times for 2.5 years every month, paying my way, doing work with the Solidarity Network. We organized relief, rehab, all of that. And another 35 times after that, because my first initiative at the foundation was to select Andamans kids. This story is about when you're being blocked, when you're being thwarted, when you're being stopped from doing something that makes you happy, would make other people happy, certainly wouldn't make anybody unhappy. That's not cool. And if it means you go over that bosses, you get my point, you should do it. You should totally do it. But you have to be dead sure that what you're doing, you're resolute and it's worthy. And then I think official channels, hierarchies should be exploded. This is the last story and the toughest story. I mean, we'll keep chatting, but this is from rugby. It's 1998, I began playing for India, rugby. And really late, I was 31, because India wasn't a recognized rugby playing nation till I was 31. So till then, I just played domestic circuit and I played I played at the national level, at the highest level nationally. I played for 10 years. The Commonwealth Games are in 2010. And I decided in 2008, that's it. I'm going to retire in 2008 after 10 years. I played 15 internationals, all 15 that India played. Because in the next year and a half, there's going to be a pumping of money, equipment, coaches, all of that snazzy stuff is going to happen. Because the Commonwealth Games are in Delhi. And rugby is a Commonwealth, Olympic, Asian Games sport. And it's played by the best teams in the world, like the All Blacks and the South Africans, the Springboks, the English, the Welsh, etc., etc. But India is playing as one of the nations because we're the hosts. So apart from those 12 nations that have sweated blood to get there, India is also there playing, which is great, I love the fact that the host country gets a bye. And so I said, I'm going to retire so that somebody else with more hair and better looks at least can come in and do rugby proud. There's no point in me hanging around. That's cool. So I announced my retirement. There was a Tri-Nations happening in Philippines. We were in Manila. There was India, Manila, Philippines, and I want to say Thailand, maybe? 2008. Now, in a rugby team, there are 15 people. In a cricket team, there are 11. In a hockey, 11. In a football, 11. In a football team of 11, there are about 4 or 5 substitutes, correct me, whatever it is, who come on and play. It never happens in cricket. There's no substitution. In rugby, there are 7 substitutes. So from 1 to 15 are your top 15. From 16 to 22 are your other players who get a lot of time to play in an 80-minute game because it's a blood sport. You're breaking things, people are getting off, all of that stuff. So a substitute is all 7 are used without a shadow of doubt between minutes 40 to 80. Are you with me? 80-minute game. Second half is when the subs start, unless somebody smashes their nose or something in the first minute of the game. My worth, my ability isn't good enough to be in the front 15 of India. So I am 18. I won't get into technicalities, but these 7 are for 7 positions. But let's say that I'm the 18th best player in India, just for argument's sake, right? And so every single game that we play, I get on in the second half. Sometimes in minute 50, sometimes minute 55, sometimes 60, whatever. So now we've just played our first test match. We've lost. We're playing the Philippines and we are winning. It's going to be a comfortable-ish win. It's not a tight one. In a tight one, the coaches sometimes will play only 15. The first half gets over. Coach turns to 7 of us and says, start warming up. 7 start warming up. And I think minute 43 or 44, he goes, 16. 16 goes on. Clapped off. 6 of us warming up. Another 6, 7 minutes later, he says, 17. 17 goes on. So I know it's my turn next. So, I'm just like doing now a few bursts, few sprints, because finally that's what you're going to do on that field as opposed to jog. And then he snaps his fingers about maybe minute 64, 65. And he says, 19. 19 goes on, guy comes off. There are 3 of us left, 4 of us left, 20, 21, 22, and 18. And in the 69th minute, he goes 20. 20 goes in, still 10 minutes to go. So has a 10-minute game. By minute 73, he goes 21. So 21 goes on. Now there are 2 of us warming up, 22 and 18. And in minute 77, he says 22. These are the last 3 minutes of my entire career for India. We're winning. Now there's nothing that can stop us from losing, from winning. It's minute 77, the 3 minutes left for me to just go out there and just go out there as my last scout for India. Now I know it's my turn, so I'm warming up. 78, 79, and he turns to me, looks away, and the whistle goes. Before the whistle goes, the referee is called for extra time. There are 4 minutes of extra time. Game's going on. It's 81, and now I'm just looking at him. 82. In the 83rd minute, he does nothing. And then the hooter goes for full time. And there are 43 players who played for their country on that day, and 1 who hasn't. And there are 43 players who have dirty jerseys, dirty shorts. Those are the scars you wear of a rugby game. And there's one guy who's drenched in sweat. Boys come off. We won. Celebration. And like, why would, they see my face like, they keep quiet. These are boys I've played with for 10 years. Team bus. I don't want to be there. Because this is a really, really happy moment. I don't want to screw it up for these guys. I know how it feels. Everybody's laughing, joking, dancing, the music is banging, but they're at the back of the bus. And I'm sitting, hating myself and hating the coach, incredibly angry and so puzzled by the injustice of it all. I just couldn't figure it out. I don't want to be there, but I have to. I've got to go back to the hotel. And everybody thinks rugby players aren't sensitive, but they are. And so the guy who shares his room with me disappears so that I can get the room to myself. And I go into the room, take off my sweat cotton jersey and shorts and stockings, all clean, have a shower, get dressed, and I'm walking down the corridor and I can see mayhem. You don't want to be on a floor when a rugby team has won a tournament or won a game. Guys are running naked, towels are being slapped, food is being thrown. It's just crazy. The boom boxes are all, and room service just comes in the corridor, just leaves the food and just goes back. It's like COVID before COVID happened. And I just walk out. And they pretend everything is fine, but they know that I've walked. And I go downstairs and ask the concierge, I was like, where's the nearest bar, which is not in this hotel? He's like, the Shangri-La's across the road, got a nice bar. I said, cool, thanks. It's not late. It's a daytime game. And the sun sets early in the Philippines. So let's say 6 o'clock. It's 6 o'clock, and I go in there. And at the time, I used to only drink beer. And I start to drink. And from 6 in the evening to 2 in the morning, I drink. I must have had 15 beers, 15, 20 beers. And I'm dead sober. I'm dead sober. Because I'm just so furious. I'm just so hurt. And I'm so humiliated. And at 2 o'clock, the phone starts buzzing. Bose, where are you? Listen, man, forget about it. We've all come to this bar. We're at this club. This is our last night. We'll never hang together like this. Come on, don't be silly. Come on, hang out with us. And he says, the coach is with us. And I'm like, yeah, I'm coming. So I go. And sure enough, the coach is there. And I walk up to him and I just ask him one question with one word, which is, why? And he gives me the most violent answer I've ever received in my life. He doesn't say anything. He just looks at me and walks away. And that's when I decided that I wasn't going to. What choice did I have? So, get back to India. I'm 41. The next tournament is early 2009. I'll be nudging 42. I hire my own fitness, my strength coach, my speed coach, my conditioning coach, and I say, let's go. And I start to train. And everybody on the Indian team, the news spreads that this guy's on the Bombay Gymkhana grounds training for what? How pathetic is this? He's 41 years old. Let it go. Just let it go. A vindictive coach, big deal. Forget about it. And I just keep at it. And of course it's humiliating. But it's the only thing I know to do. And then the time comes for selections. There's the first cut is of 60 people who have to make some basic fitness parameters. I make that. The next cut is of 35 who are going to go into camp. I make that. There's a speed, strength, endurance test there. I come 8th in that. And then the camp starts. And the cut goes from 35 to finally going to have 25, 26 traveling for the tournament. And I make that. The coach has changed by this time. I've announced my retirement again. All the guys with me are cracking dark jokes about, this is going to happen for the next 20 years. But I don't play. I don't play in 2009, which was my last year as international rugby player. In the 7 waiting on the bench, I actually start for India in my last year. All of us, every single one of us has faced a moment when you don't feel appreciated correctly to the extent that you should be appreciated for what you do. Few of us have faced that with rank favoritism, bias, hatred. And there's nothing more weakening than to be hated. There's nothing more exhausting than to be hated. Perhaps to hate is more exhausting. Only that, perhaps. And so the lesson I learned was, when people treat you unfairly, when the door is slammed shut in your face for no reason, you've met all the parameters, what you have to do is walk away from that door. Then turn and face that door. Then sprint towards that door and fling your body on that door and smash it down. So that the shame is on them for not selecting you. You have to be so good, so fast, so strong, so skillful, if you're talking about rugby, that if they don't select you, the shame is on them. It'll be a scandal. That's how good you have to be to then say, that's it. Now I go. Now I leave. Because the truth of this world is, ladies and gentlemen, whatever you think of yourself, the world thinks exactly half of that of you. Simple. Your prowess at a sport, your good looks, your fashion sense, just cut it by half. That's what the world thinks of you. So if you want to smash that door down, incontestably that you will be in the team, you have to be at 200%. Never, ever, ever leave anything to chance. Never. Once you crush all those variables and leave nothing to chance, then if it doesn't happen, you can walk, you can fly. Fine. We're going to chat after this, so just one last thing I want to do with you guys. Everyone talks about education. Some of the greatest killers of humankind have been educated. Right? It's not education that makes you a good person. It's the right kind of education that makes you a good person. And it has nothing to do with study. It's to do with morality. What you think is right and what you think is wrong. So I'm just going to play, it's not a game, it's actually just a thing. People keep saying, yeah, but how do I, what is this great thing? I'm just going to try and do something with you guys. Humor me, if you will. If you were to die today, if you were to die just now, which you will if I speak any longer, but if you were to die today, what do you hope your best friend will say about you at your funeral or your burial? Not what you hope, but realistically, this is what Shivani would say about me. Or realistically, this is what Amritangshu would say about me. Is there an Amritangshu here? You get my point? Really? There you go. See? In the old days, it was Rahul, and 18 people put their hand up, including the guy who ran the panty shop, because it was Rahul, But now it's Amritangshu. So, if you were to die today, what do you realistically believe your best friend would say about you? I miss Debashruti because she was X, Y, Z. Anybody? Just give it a thought. What do you think your best friend would say about you at your memorial service? Yes. She always made me laugh. She always made me laugh. And that made you feel happy. So that basically was a life-affirming, a positive thing that she was doing for you. Can we say that she was sharing? In the most invisible way? Sit back and just make you laugh. I'm sure it made her feel good. Sharing always does. Okay, what else? Yes?
I miss talking about random things for just a couple of hours.
Why? Why do you miss that guy particularly? You've spoken random shit to so many people.
With that person, with random shit, yes, but with that particular person,
it's you, you're dead. They're talking about you. Because, because it wasn't just, there was some meaning, there was something that took you up, took you down. At the very minimum, you guys clicked. There was understanding. There was a vibe, right? You guys had a good vibe going. Okay. What else? If you died, what do you hope, what do you think realistically your best friend would say about you? I miss her. I miss him like hell because. Come on, what are best friends there for? Yes.
She remembered how I like her, how I like my hot chocolate.
She remembered how I liked my hot chocolate. She remembered. She knew, a lot of people know, but she remembered. Right? Last one. Let's take a last one.
She was there with me through thick and thin.
I mean, that's what best friends are for, right? Yeah. What are you articulating? Do this, not now, do this at your own time. Seriously sit down and say, what are those 3 things that my best friend would say about me if I died? Or I hope, given, I'll tell you what I hope Nasir will say about me. Nasir and I grew up since I was 6. I stopped growing, he kept growing. I think Nas would say, I miss him because he was really generous. I miss him because, in a strange way, he was just truthful. He just called it as he saw it. And I miss him because he was always fair. I hope, my hope. Nasir might just be too smashed at my wake or whatever to say anything. As take me to hospital. Maybe he might say that at the end. But this is what I hope. And when you do this, guys, you will come up with 3 or 4 things that you hope someone said about you. Those are the things most importantly to you. If you say, I want to be thought of as someone who's there for you, someone who's chilled, doesn't differentiate between people, what you're saying is, I want to be thought of as that person, right? How else will my best friend say that she was non-discriminatory? I'm using a technical term, right? If I'm discriminatory. So if you want to be thought of as fair, truthful, and generous, it obviously follows that in your life you should be fair, truthful, or at least not unfair, not untruthful, and not a stingy bastard. Right? That is your moral compass. That is your moral compass. Whatever those 3 qualities are, there are 3, 4, 5, 2, that are so important to you that you want to be thought of by other people for that, that's your compass. That's what you have to ask yourself every single time, not when you go to the washroom, is this fair? Is this just? But you get my point. In those moments, how will I be judged for this? And if you don't have this compass, you're going to be living life at a very subhuman level. You need to have this compass at the very minimum to start. Then happiness and stuff will follow. But this is the very, very solid building blocks. Anyway, I'm done with that.